Aloha mai kako, a Como by the Curtain Call, a program of reviews, previews, interviews, and features of and or with the great art and artists on Maui and beyond. I'm Paul James Brown. Last week was 4th Friday in Kihei. Hundreds of folks descended on Azeka Makai for the long-awaited event. We so want to get back to pre-pandemic times. This unfortunately kept Ebb Flow Arts lovers from getting to Pro Arts Playhouse, where Nic Gerpe, an LA-based pianist-composer, put on a wonderful show on the occasion of the 50th anniversary of George Crumb's Masterwork Makrokosmos Volume 1 in 3 parts, 12 fantasy pieces after the Zodiac for amplified piano. There are 4 volumes, and based on what I saw and heard, I would love it if Ebb Flow Arts would produce the other 3. It began with a lesson in contemporary music and piano playing by Mr. Gerpe. Mr. Gerpe introduced the seminal works of Schoenberg's 12-tone school, the development of the pentatonic scale by Debussy, Bela Bartok's innovations, John Cage's prep piano, where he put implements on the strings to change the tones, Henry Cowell, who played on the strings, Charles Ives' atonality and polytonality, and pointed out Crumbs incorporated all of these and added a few of his own touches, such as vocalizing and playing the piano. You're saying, duh, playing the piano, of course, it's a piano piece. But I don't mean it in that sense. I mean Crumbs incorporated knocking on the piano as if it were a percussion instrument. He also had the pianist vocalize. Mr. Crumbs wasn't only an innovative composer, instrumentalist, but he was also one who wanted the sheet music to be expressive as well. Mr. Gerpe showed several of Crumbs' innovations. Here is his score for Crucifix Capricorn. This one for Leo. The work is entitled Magic Circle of Infinity, Moto Perpetuo. Here is an excerpt from the work. And here is Aquarius, the spiral galaxy, and this is what it sounded like. After this lesson, then Mr. Gerpe discussed each of the 12 movements of the Makrokosmos Volume 1 based on the Zodiac. However, curiously, it does not follow the normal order of the signs. I can only surmise, after looking at the titles, there were aspects of the characteristics of each of the signs that determined their order. There certainly was a relationship between the titles and the music. For example, this is his tribute to Pisces, entitled Proteus. In Greek mythology, the prophetic old man of the sea and shepherd of sea flocks, think seals. The work began with Cancer and explored every sign, concluding with Aquarius. Then came the second part of the program. For this 50th anniversary, Mr. Gerpe enlisted 11 contemporary composers and himself and asked them to create companion works to Crumbs. Thus we got to hear the Hawaii premiere of the Makrokosmos 50 project that featured, besides Mr. Gerpe doing his version of Keith Emerson meets George Crumbs in Ghost of Manticore, Scorpio, Associate Professor of Music at Chapman University, Vera Ivanova, gave us Carcata, Cancer. Dr. Fernanda Aoki Navarro, whose works have been performed by the New York Philharmonic, among others, did Crumbling, Pisces, a clever play on words. Grammy-nominated composer Gernot Wolfgang took on Taurus with the Patience of Water. Eric Guinivan didn't only respond to Mr. Crumb's Crucifix, he also created a visual score for this work entitled Signal, in which we long for connection. Check this out. after Mr. Gerpe came the work of Dr. Alexander Elliott Miller, whose celestial crown, Sagittarius, was a response to Mr. Crumb's Night Spell 1. One of the most interesting of these new composers to me was Dr. Viet Cuong, who was born in 1990. He studied at the Curtis Institute, the Peabody Conservative, and received both his PhD and MA from Princeton. His work, Scaling Back, was a reaction to Mr. Crumb's Libra work, Music of the Shadows. A Hume Fellow at Stanford University, who teaches at the San Francisco Conservatory of Music in the Technology and Applied Composition program, got Leo. Her Circle of was a response to Mr. Crumb's The Magic Circle of Infinity, Moto Perpetuo. Gilda Lyons answered Mr. Crumb's The Abyss of Time, his Paean to Virgos, with Transcendence of Time. Timothy Peterson, an international composer, has studied Carnatic singing in South India, Bata drumming in Cuba, and the Quanan, Arabic zither, in Tangier. He did Aries and titled it as such. Mr. Crumb's Aries is Spring Fire, and it was a real shocker. Listen to this and see if you recognize something. That's right, it's a section from Chopin's Fantasy Impromptu Opus 66, transformed by Harry Carroll into the Judy Garland anthem from the 1941 film Ziegfeld Girl, I'm Always Chasing Rainbows. The penultimate composer was Juhi Bansal, an Indian who was raised in Hong Kong. She did Through Cracked Mirrors, a response to Mr. Crumb's Dream Images based on Gemini. Finally, we have University of Hawaii professor of theory and composition Thomas Osborne, who had Aquarius, and his response to Mr. Crumb's Spiral Galaxy was Supernova. Here is what the composition looked like. And this was Mr. Crumb's Spiral Galaxy. Mr. Gerpe presented a thoroughly virtuosic performance of George Crumb's seminal 20th century masterwork, and he did the entire performance off book. He memorized all of these incredibly complex works. The difficulty and excellence of this feat cannot be overstated. This work lives and breathes, and its complexity and profundity is most apparent when it is performed live. I do not think it would have the same impact or effect in a recording, unless it was a video. Although he read the second half of the program, it was no less wonderful, intriguing, challenging, and consciousness-raising. Ebb Flow Arts is such a great resource to new music, and we are so blessed to have this world-class organization among us. Be sure to keep an eye out for their next program. They are always exciting, fresh, and new, and thank you very much, Robert Pollock. Well, that's Curtain Call for this week. Mahalo nui loa for tuning in. I'm Paul James Brown. Ahui ho!